So you would think that Dana Holgorsen would be sufficiently afraid of Lincoln Riley and his offense, but he's not. And we need to talk about it after the bumper.
What do you mean you don't subscribe to my son's YouTube channel?
Mama, no!
Just snap the damn ball, RJ.
What's up, kinfolk? It's RJ Young. I am not on a step mill. Consider hitting the like and subscribe button because I upload a video every single day. It's always OU related, college football related, sports related. We have a good time. And today I want to talk about Lincoln Riley in relation to Dana Holgorsen because this is a fascinating matchup between number 4 Oklahoma and Houston that carries itself like a Power 5 conference team, even if it doesn't always play like one. But they definitely have a Power 5 level quarterback in D'Eriq King. I've talked about him at length. I will continue to talk about him at length because he is one of the most dynamic playmakers in college football today. And it feels like Dana Holgorsen should be able to do quite a few things with him and Marquez Stevenson. This is the guy that more or less invented Whedon to Blackman and put in an offense that looked like it was built for power running when really it was built to get one-on-one options on the outside for guys like Blackman. They would run this diamond formation and split out too wide and try to get, to load the box so that they could get those guys on the outside free. And Brandon Whedon would just chuck it and Blackman would go get it. Still, I don't understand what exactly happened with Justin Blackman in the NFL. I wished it would have worked out. But I wanted to take it back to the early aughts when Lincoln Riley was stepping onto campus at Texas Tech. He chose Texas Tech because he was enthralled by the offense that Leach was running. You know it. I know it. It's the air raid. They threw the ball all over the yard, thinking that if we space people out, it doesn't matter what defense they're in. We're going to throw it to the soft spot, and we're going to move the ball down the field. So at the time that Riley was on campus as a freshman, as a student, Dana Holgorsen and Sonny Dykes were both inside and outside receivers for Mike Leach. And this is a place where quarterbacks like B.J. Symons, Kliff Kingsbury, Sonny Cumbie had already come through. And Riley showed up as a dude out of Muleshoe, Texas that couldn't throw the ball. And he was so bad throwing the ball that Dykes and Holgorsen went to Mike Leach and said, "Why are you giving this guy reps? He's ruining morale. Our guys know that the ball's never going to get to them. They know that he's not the best quarterback, and you're ruining practice by giving this guy reps." And it got so bad that Leach went to Riley and said, "Hey, I think you should consider becoming a student assistant because it ain't working out as a quarterback at Texas Tech." And you got to remember, Riley had offers to play at Ivy League schools. He's a very, very smart guy, and I want to get into that a little bit more. But he was so pissed that he went home for a couple days to think over Leach's option that he should, join up as an assistant coach. And he came back and he decided to do it. And he was one of those guys that was just in the room all the time, learning how they did things and then being able to contribute. The way that Leach put it is, usually you put assistants on a conveyor belt. You tell them what to do and they spit it out. Riley would add to the conveyor belt. And in so doing, he has added to his own game. Remember, like when he came to Oklahoma, the fear was he was just going to try to throw the ball all over the yard because that's what he did at Tech and that's what he did at East Carolina. But he was made to understand we got these running backs in this offensive line and we need to use them. So you have this introduction of the pro raid and you have him innovating on top of the air raid so that you get these outstanding run schemes and run concepts. A lot of that goes to Bill Beatonbow, as many people would say and need to know. But a lot of that is also Riley understanding the talent that he has at his disposal. And I'm going to get into this in another upload, but he's heading into a season where he's going to coach the most talented team he's ever had at Oklahoma, according to the 247 Talent Team Composite, which is a really good indicator of overall talent on a roster and takes into account transfers, signing class, all of those things. And I find it fascinating that we get to say that in a year where not a whole lot of people expect them to win a national championship, but do expect them to be in the mix for a college football playoff spot. Holgorsen has known Riley probably as long as anybody when we're talking about coaches in FBS, and they coached alongside each other. And he knows the staff at Oklahoma because they coached together. Remember, Dennis Symons and Cale Gundy and Bill Beatonbow, all of those guys had coached with Mike Leach at one point or another. So there's not a whole lot of newness to these rivalries. But the only guy that seems to be taking it on personally is Holgorsen. But it also feels like that's just what Holgorsen does. He's going to speak his mind. He's going to give us things to talk about. He's going to give us things to write about as Riley just continues to go about his business. And every once in a while, he'll throw a dart at you to remind you what Oklahoma is and what it's been since he has taken over as offensive play caller and head coach. And this is the part that I find most fascinating. Riley's probably going to be in the best position to beat anybody that he's coached with, not necessarily because he knows that person, but because he's got, I think, a photographic memory. Like his teammates at Muleshoe thought he was going to work for NASA. And if you are scoring high enough on your ACT and SAT to get into Ivy League schools, you have the GPA to get into Ivy League schools, you're probably pretty good at learning. And then for him, his recall is ridiculous. Like if you ever watch his coach's show, you'll see guys like Teddy Lehman throw a down and distance at him, and he'll spit out the play call, and he'll spit out what they did on it, and he'll spit out how the defense reacted to it. He's really good at understanding his own tendencies and the tendencies of the folks that he's coaching against. Even so, I think defensively, you should take advantage of that. If you're Alex Grinch, you should be like, hey man, what do you see on film? I know you're preparing for the offense, but what do you see? And Riley, I think, has the management skills not to overstep his bounds, but also to contribute as a glorified assistant in a film room. I think you really got to take advantage of everybody who's got a photographic memory, and those guys make for really good head coaches because football is all about tendencies and repetition and doing what you know how to do over and over again. Now, the common denominator there is if you run your scheme better than they run their scheme, you have a much more likely chance of winning, even if they have more talent. It might help you out. We've used to talent just overrunning a scheme, but when that talent is not elite, Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Ohio State, you are much better prepared to take on another team that might be a little bit more talented than you. On the docket this week, you got Boise State and Florida State. Boise State is in a position to get an upset here, as much as we can talk about Florida State being an upset, because they were 5-7 last year, one of the most talented rosters according to the 247 Team Talent Composite, and Willie Taggart has underperformed. You can say the same thing about USC, but I think they're going to come back because they're going to simplify the offense and go fast. Saying that Boise State has made a, well, not just tradition, but it's their calling card. They're less talented than you are, but they're going to run their stuff better than you run their stuff, and they're not going to beat themselves. Another team that goes into this is Kansas State under Bill Snyder. They would routinely be, toward the bottom end of talent and the bottom end of recruiting and still be able to punch up and go get people when they were able to run their stuff well. And if you give them just a little bit of talent, they're always pretty good. You can say the same thing about TCU. I think that TCU, like LSU, is a quarterback away from being a national title contender. Now, LSU folks are thinking, hey man, Joe Burrow is that dude. He ain't Khalil Tate. And if you had Khalil Tate, you'd be in it, okay? There would be no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You're that talented defensively. You're that talented at each of the skill positions, and you're that talented in the trenches. You just need a quarterback to get you by. And in college football, it feels like the quarterback can do even more in the game than an NFL caliber MVP quarterback could do. And we're talking about the difference between perhaps having Khalil Tate, as I said, to buoy you if you're Arizona, and they nearly came back and beat Hawaii. He was the guy that just got tackled before the goal line when he could have tied it up in regulation, versus a guy like Matt Ryan, right, who's a great quarterback and has great pocket presence. But I don't expect Matt Ryan to be in a position to win you a game like Khalil Tate might. I understand that I'm conflating pro football with college football, but you understand my point. And now that both Dana Holgorsen and Lincoln Riley have talented players, they are talented play callers. I expect to see those two things cancel each other out and come down to X's and O's and play calling. I give that to Lincoln Riley, just like everybody else gives that to Lincoln Riley, but I've always kind of been fascinated. Dana Holgorsen is not sufficiently afraid of Lincoln Riley because all he's been doing is beating him like he stole something. And even in a game that he should have won last year, you had Riley have a quarterback that he knew what to do with in Morgantown, and they went and got a W in a game where Holgorsen's offense was really good and put up over 700 yards on a bad Oklahoma defense. All right, that's it for me. Doses.